Hello, welcome to the review video on fractions. So, first of all, what is a fraction? Well, you say that a fraction represents parts of a whole, right? So some examples where maybe you've seen fractions. A common one is in cooking, right? Part of a whole when you're describing groups or populations, right, of certain things, right? There's a lot of time in construction, right, where you're looking at parts of a meter, whatever it happens to be. Fractions are almost everywhere. So you need to know some terminology with it. When we say what's a numerator, that's the number we give to the top number of the fraction. So something like 7 over 12, right? The numerator is the 7. The denominator then is the bottom, right? So it would be the 12 in that example. Common denominator is another part you've probably seen before. But if you have two fractions with different denominators, right, so different bottom numbers, you need to have a common denominator, so something that's common between them, the same, right, in order to add or subtract them. So for example, 2/3 and 3/4, you can't add thirds and fourths together. They just don't mix like math. So to get a common number between the two, looking for a number that both 3 and 4 go into, or a number that they're both divisible by. So sometimes, right, if it's not jumping out at you ahead of time, you can be like, okay, what's 4 times 3? Well, that's 12. So I know that they're both divisible by 12. And to figure out what the top number is, before you do the bottom, you have to do the top. I multiply 3 times 4 to get to 12. I have to multiply 2 times 4 as well. So that's an 8. And if I multiply 4 by 3 to get to 12, I have to multiply the numerator by 3 as well. So that's a 9. So 2/3 is the same as 8/12, right? So let me change that. So why don't you try this one on your own? And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and talk about equivalent fractions. Okay, equivalent fractions. So first things, equivalent fractions are often about getting fractions in their lowest terms. Sometimes you're actually trying to make the fraction bigger, right? A lot of times you're trying to make it smaller. So you're looking for the GCF, which is the greatest common factor. So factor, you see that word usually means multiplying. Greatest is the biggest, right? So the biggest number that both of the two numbers kind of go into. So right here it says both the numerator and the denominator. So you're looking for a number that's divisible by both the numerator and the denominator. So the biggest factor that goes into them. So we look at 9 and 12. And they're not even numbers, so like this one, I know they're both divisible by 2. That's not the greatest number, but at least it's a number that they're both divisible by. 9 and 12, the greatest number that they're both divisible by is 3. So if I go 9 divided by 3, I get 3. 12 divided by 3, I get 4. So 3/4 is equivalent to 9 over 12, and 3/4 is in lowest terms. So there's not a number that both goes into 3 and 4. So why don't you finish that one on your own, pause the video, and join us. Actually, you could do these ones as well. Why don't you put those ones in lowest terms too? And when you're done, right, you can join us on the bottom. Okay, welcome back. A little bit more terminology. First word that we're going to look at is a proper fraction. So a proper fraction is a fraction where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. And this is usually what you're used to. Something like, sorry about that. There we go. This one, something like 7 over 8. Right, the top number is smaller than the bottom number. A mixed fraction is exactly that. It's mixed up. It's part of a whole number and part of a fraction. So a whole number and a proper fraction together. So a mixed fraction might look like 2 and 1/3. Right, part fraction, part number. And an improper fraction is the opposite to a proper. That's when the numerator is bigger, right, or larger than or equal to the denominator. So for example, something like 9 over 4, that's an improper fraction, and technically equal to would be 4 over 4. That's an improper fraction too. So hopefully those words are familiar. Why don't you turn the page over And the first skill we're going to practice is changing from a mixed to an improper. So often in high school, we don't use mixed fractions. Almost always, right, we want our fractions as an improper fraction. It's important to know how to go between them. So the first step is to multiply the denominator by the whole number. So my first step, I know that 3 times 5 is 15. That's step number one. Step number two is then to add the numerator. So that would mean 15 plus 3, which is 18. So the denominator is going to stay the same, still be 6, but my numerator is now 18. Okay, so why don't you try 2 and 1/7 on your own. You can pause the video, and then now we'll do improper to mix. So this time you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. And then, so that would mean 15 divided by 8. That equals 1 and some decimals. I'm going to put it into my calculator over here. Let's see. 15 divided by 8. That's 1.875. So the number part, not the decimal, but that's the number out front. Now I'm going to take the quotient when that's the answer, that's the whole number. The remainder is the numerator. So to figure out what the remainder is, again, my denominator will stay the same. Right, if I want 8 times 1, that gives me 8. I need 7 more to get to 15. All right, so that, whoops, to get to 15. So that's my numerator. Right, 7/8 is kind of what's left over, right? If it were 16 over 8, that would be a nice solid 2. Okay, so why don't you try 9/5? And then the questions below, changing them from either proper mixed or mixed to improper. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to do some adding and subtracting. So the first rule is to find the lowest common denominator. Right, so a number that they're both divisible by if there isn't a common denominator already. And like we kind of did on the front page, you're going to change the bottom, you got to change the top. You add and subtract the numerators, keep the denominators the same, and your answer should always be in lowest terms without a doubt, and improper fractions would be best. Let's do a couple here together. So if I have 3/5 plus 1/5, that's 4/5 altogether. The denominator stays the same, you add the numerators. Alright, so you can try B, it's the same rules apply. If I've got 2/3 plus 1/4, I need an equal, or sorry, a lowest common denominator between the two. So 12 is the smallest number that they both go into. There's other numbers out there, but 12 is the smallest. I multiply the bottom by 4, I've got to multiply the top by 4, and multiply this denominator by 3, have to multiply that denominator by 3, and then it kind of ends up like a question that we just did in A. So 8/12 plus 3/12, that's 11/12 altogether. Okay, so you can do the subtraction one. And then the last one here, the first step is to improper. So 4 times 5 is 20. 20 plus 2 is 22/5. And then here, 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. And then I'm back again to something like letter A, which is a little bit more reasonable. So 22/5 plus 15/5, the bottom stays together, and I have 38/5. Improper is good, just the lowest terms, which this one is. Okay, so make sure before next day you fill in all the ones that I didn't do with you. That's part of your homework. If you have any questions, right, please bring them to class. Thank you.